17104.com. This is Zanetta Wingfield, and you're listening to The Voice 17104.com. The Voice 17104.com. Welcome to Did You Know? Podcast, your host, Richard Utley, dedicated to the African American viewers. The program is aimed to celebrate African American culture and deal with the real and relevant topics that impact the everyday lives of the African American community through frank and insightful dialogue with local and national influencers. Every day, there is another horrible, discouraging news story, directly or indirectly, impacting African Americans. But we need to look at the shining stars in the galaxy of Black America. It is time to tell our story.
Good evening, and welcome to another Did You Know? Well, we're going to have an exciting program this evening. I'm going to change it up a little bit today. And what I mean, I'm going to change it up a little bit today. But before I change it up, as you all know, I always tell you, if you're going to vote, you better register to vote because the deadline is coming up. That's number one. Number two, some of you should be thinking about running for office. If you're thinking about running for office, it's time for you to do that now. So stop playing all that lip service saying, if I was in, I would do this. If I was in, I would do that. So if you get in, then you could do it. The third thing is, don't forget, we have to support those that support us. We have to support those who's looking out for our welfare. Because I've always said to you, I'm a big believer that if we don't look out for our own community, then shame on us. So if we keep waiting on somebody to ride through our neighborhoods and to take care of everything for us, then we're in trouble. You know, I'm glad to realize that, I was reading something and I'm glad to realize that a lot of churches now are starting to teach history. Even though when I was growing up, a lot of history was taught in the different churches. But now we've realized that we need to take it upon ourselves to do our own homework, our own research. Because I've said it before, if we start to talk about our history and tell the wonderful, great things and the legacies that we've had before, and as we continue to grow in development, I think it will help young people to look in the mirror and see that a lot of people have done a lot of things. So I'm going to start this off two ways today. I'm going to use the history part first. And that is, I've always tried to give you 2 or 3 names of things that I want you to look up on your own. And I'm not going to tell you who they are because I want you to look them up for yourselves. But as I started to put that together today, I had a reflection in my own mind about that. So the first one would be Richard Allen. You will have to find out who he is, and you should do your research in who Richard Allen is. The other one is, I'm just going to say it to you. In 1822, Philadelphia becomes one of the first major cities to open its public schools to Blacks. The first school was segregated. It was just one boy. And so naturally the schools were segregated, and then, it remained segregated until the 1930s. I just wanted to tell you that because we played some significant roles in terms of who we are. And so I just wanted to tell you that, but I want you to do research of different people. Fortunately, in talking about history, I'm going to bring up Mal Good. And you probably want to know who Mal Good is. And I want you to do your research to find out who Mal Good is. And I will say to you, I was very lucky and very fortunate to have the opportunity to know Mal Good. The other issue is, and I made a decision that I thought that was very important, and I'm going to highlight someone. There was a gentleman named Herb Douglas from 1922 to 2023. I'm just going to read a little bit about him because I think I want to give you perspectives of different people. Herb P. Douglas Jr., the oldest living U.S. Olympic medalist and a University of Pittsburgh alumni, who served on the board of trustees and later was named, emeritus. On April 22nd, 2023, he was 101. Here's my point to you. Born March 9th, 1922, Douglas grew up in Pittsburgh's Hazelwood neighborhood and completed multi-sports at Taylor Alderdice High School, where he won city championships in tumbling, sprinting, basketball, and state titles in track and field. Douglas transferred to the University of Pittsburgh in 1945 after starting college at Xavier University in Louisiana. He started on the pit track team, winning 4 intercollegiate championships in the long jump and 1 in the 100-yard dash, as well as 3 national AAU championships in the long jump. He also played football. He became one of the first 3 black players at Pitt, and he graduated a degree in physical education in 1948. A few months later, he won a bronze medal in the London's Summer Olympics. He earned a master's degree in education from Pitt in 1950. But here's my point. More than anything, I wanted to be a coach, he told Ebony magazine in 2017. But Pittsburgh was not employing in public school systems African Americans to be coaches. The reason I bring that up to you, I think sometimes we forget it hasn't been that long ago. So when people tell you about history, and that's been a long time ago, I happen to know Herb. He was a wonderful man. But did you hear what I said? He wanted to be a coach way, way back and he couldn't. So we need to understand those things because people like him was our trailblazers. And I think that we need to go in your neighborhoods, your churches, your communities, and you will find there's a lot of trailblazers, male and female, that did a lot for you, for me, for the community, and they go unsung. So I think one of the things we need to do is start to identify our people and identify them, and they might be unsung heroes, but they were heroes. But my point is this, it wasn't that long ago. So keep that in mind. Somebody's always shooting somebody and we're killing people. So, how are young people getting such easy access to guns? There's never been a period in the United States where so many young people have so much access to guns. If a person in Pennsylvania you can't own a gun until you're 18. But yet they seen there's so many young people that are getting guns. When I was growing up, and a lot of you when you were growing up, if we were going to get into a fight, it was basically a fist fight. Those days are over now. So now we're talking about kids 15, 16 years old that have firearms. Are they really? They're not even mature enough to even regulate their emotions to use the firearm in the first place. And so if they shoot them, guess what? The damage is already done. So how are they getting them? Well, you hear these words and you can do your own research on straw purchase. A lot of young people get it from them. That means that somebody purchased a gun and then sell it to somebody else, especially in the inner cities neighborhoods. And, they can't go to Dick's and buy the guns. And a lot of people can't get the guns because they're already convicted felons. But they get the guns and they sell them to young people for drugs or whatever. And it's killing our neighborhoods. It's killing us. And so my thought is that we need to take a long, long, hard look at that. And how do they get them also? They steal them out of cars. Come on, folks. You're going to have a gun in your car. You leave it in your car, and then somebody steals it and kills somebody with it. And a lot of you can go back and buy other guns. My point is this here. We got to put a stop to that. We got to make sure what's coming into our neighborhood and what's going out of our neighborhood. But we also need to be supportive of young people. Because think about it. When we were growing up, we were going to fight with fists. Now kids are scared, they're bullied. And so what do? They get a gun to protect themselves. And what happens is they get a gun to protect themselves, And sometimes I think they think about it's like a movie, so they take it and go bang, bang. They've done killed someone. It affects their family and it affects the other family. So we need to kind of think about that and try to develop choices for young people that they won't feel that they have to carry a gun. We also have to realize that we need to put a stop to making it so easy for these young people to get the guns. Because you and I know, and I'll leave you with this before I go to my program. You know, we didn't make the guns, so they got here some kind of way, good, bad, or indifferent, but we got to stop and we got to work to find a way to not have young people wanting to have guns and carry guns and make guns so easy. Okay, so now it's time for my program. So what's my program today? I have the fortune of having a young lady named Jacqueline D.Hill, and it's Jacqueline D.Hill's associate. She's an economic development consultant, and she's out of Pittsburgh. And I'm fortunate because I've known her a long time, even to the point we graduated from Westinghouse High School in Pittsburgh. And I'm so proud of her because she is a mover, she's a shaker, and I brought her on today because she's a wealth of knowledge. And so we're going to talk about some economic development things. And then after that, we're going to talk a little politics too. So I'm glad to have her on. I'm proud of you. So Jacqueline, please tell my audience your journey, how you got to where you got to, because you have to keep in mind, because I know where you started at. Please.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. As you said, I graduated from Westinghouse High School and grew up in Homewood, Brushton. I was fortunate enough to grow up in a community that was vibrant. Something that I think people forget, the young people, the last two generations have never seen a community, a thriving Black community in Pittsburgh the way that we did growing up. Homewood Avenue had 3 supermarkets, 5 grocery stores, meat stores, shoe stores, you name it. We could go down Homewood Avenue after school and get a job, along with all of the other extra curriculum activities that were available to us through sports and music and all of the things that existed during that time. Somewhere that was lost, and here we are now. However, those of us who had the fortunate opportunity to get educated or exposed, and in some cases both, allowed us to take a journey because we had the confidence, we had the support, and we had a sense of purpose and direction that was instilled into us. I started out as a secretary in one of the corporations because of Mrs. Harper, who taught us typing and shorthand. That gave me exposure to a corporate world, something that I did not have. However, secretarial work wasn't for me, so I had to explore other things. I ultimately became, after returning to school, a buyer with the Joseph Horn Company downtown. You remember Joseph Horn's? That led me into sales, working for Kraft Foods, Burlington Industries, and 3 or 4 other companies in the area of sales. But I ultimately landed at a small business incubator on the north side, which is now called Riverside Innovation Center. It was called Riverside Commons then. It was started by K. Leroy Irvis and Bill Strickland as a model that they felt would help to grow and expand Black businesses. So the center was focused on making sure that minority businesses had everything they needed. So when they graduated, there was an opportunity for them to maintain a level of success. I've also worked at the Enterprise Center in Philadelphia, where I lived for 12 years. The Enterprise Center is the former Dick Clark American Bandstand, where Black people were not allowed to enter. However, the irony is it ultimately has become a 35,000 square foot facility designed specifically to grow and develop Black businesses. I've served as the director of the African American Chamber of Philadelphia. I operated the contract for the state of Pennsylvania with the U.S. Commerce Department at the Enterprise Center, generated $450 million in contracts and financing for minority businesses, and created 2,000 full-time jobs. I've also worked for Federated Investors, where I was able to secure a securities license to sell mutual funds, and then served as the director of the Pittsburgh Community Reinvestment Group. We had agreements with 14 banks to help them meet the goals that they had laid out under the Community Reinvestment Act. Under the leadership of Stanley Lowe, we generated about $4 billion in mortgages and small business loans in minority communities and low-income communities across the city of Pittsburgh. I'm also certified in economic development, and I've completed some programs at Carnegie Mellon University, entrepreneur management, and then completed the Tuck School of Business at Dartmouth, implementing a system for high quality service minority businesses. So I've had some formal education, but I've had much more hands-on experience. And ultimately, all of this is about economic development and building wealth. So the combination of home ownership, making sure people get into homes, helping the banks design new products, loan products that met the needs of the people that we were working with. One of the things that occurred there with the Fannie Mae, we actually got them to lower the credit score, which stands today to 620 instead of 750. So being able to get in there, get creative, work with people who understand, but also demonstrating the value of supporting minorities and their communities. So that's kind of a summary of where I've been.
Well, I think that's good, because I want people to see us. I want people to see all the things that we've gone through. But before I go there, I want to touch on something that you said. Ladies and gentlemen, did you hear what she said? She talked about Homewood. She talked about Homewood Avenue. But let's think about this. Ladies and gentlemen, you could take Harrisburg, same thing, 6th Street. You can take Philadelphia. There were so many vibrant communities out there. There were stores, there were churches. And one of the issues I think we need to do, we need to go back and tell young people that. Because I think sometimes young people walk across the street and they say, oh, ain't nothing here. It was all burned up. Not knowing there was a viable communities. And I think if we get some respect to understand they were viable communities, maybe we will learn to respect our neighborhood and our communities a little better than we do today. So on that, I'm going to go right at it. Economic opportunities for minorities in Pennsylvania. And I know that you've had some trials and tribulations on this, and I know that you have looked at some things. So I'd like for you to talk about those things. So you can, we can go from healthcare, we can go from affordable housing to ownership, but I want to kick it off this way. I want to kick it off with the idea that people have to understand that we have to understand that this is a great opportunity because the Biden administration has just set out a pot of money. And if we don't get some of that money, then that's going to be shame on us if we keep walking around. Because one of my issues, the reason I brought you on this program is because I know you're knowledgeable, but I want you to get my audience knowledgeable so they don't be saying, we wait. Because my biggest concern has always been, we always too late. We late for dinner? Not really. We were always there at the table to eat. I take that back. But usually on programs and everything, I'll say to people, oh, it closed on Friday. It closed on Thursday. And we have to learn to do our research. And that's why I call this program Did You Know? So people can go out and find out what's going on. So what do you want to talk about first? I mean,
Well, there are the document that I put together and shared with you, economic opportunities for minority Pennsylvanians under the Shapiro-Davis administration. We have had a habit as a group of waiting until things are pushed down for us to take advantage of the opportunities. So then we all start running toward, and some of us are successful at completing the RFPs and getting a pot of money. However, these issues do not always address the core concerns and needs of our community. This administration has demonstrated thus far their ability to be different than previous administrations, in that the voter registration issue, automatic voter registration issue that the governor rolled out, I think last week or week before, increased pots of money, $20 million for minority businesses, and there's other things that they have done. However, our three core issues are health, housing, and the lack of access and contracts for minority businesses. If you think about those three things, not only are they needs, but they're also asset builders. We do not have assets at a level that allow us to get beyond poverty. If you own a home, you have equity. If you own a business, you have the ability to create wealth. Health generates wealth. There's a number of studies that been made available that if people are in good health, they have the ability to work, to start a business, to grow, and our access to health care has been limited. Now, this one is what I call a gimme. The Pennsylvania Department of Human Services released a racial equity report to serve as a roadmap to fight racism in healthcare. That was in 2021. So this report, this roadmap, has been sitting there for 2 years with the ability for us to change the landscape of how healthcare is administered in our communities. That's a gimme. We don't have to do anything but that one, but start to pull it down, figure out what are the needs in our community, and start creating opportunities that provide the quality and level of service that is needed in our communities. Also, it creates business opportunities. In many of the rural communities, and even not necessarily rural, but Duquesne, McKeesport, some of the communities outside of the city of Pittsburgh throughout Allegheny County don't have access to adequate health care. But there's an opportunity to train and create some people who can go to the home of seniors, who can go to the home of the disabled, and make sure that people are getting adequate health care. Make those appointments for them. Do what needs to be done to ensure that people are healthy. Well, that's an opportunity to create an employee-owned business, perhaps, where instead of working for the county, where there's little or no pay, the majority, this is an interesting statistic. The majority of young women between the ages of 25 and maybe 35 in Pittsburgh are in the healthcare industry, working for one of these healthcare companies, and they're getting paid less than $10 an hour. The turnover is tremendous, as you can imagine, because when people get other opportunities that they move on. But what about an employee-owned company where these young women have the ability not only to receive a paycheck, but to get a stake in ownership in a healthcare business of some kind? So those are some of the things that could come out of this, in addition to providing quality service to those who really need it, and accessing people, helping people to get. I know from personal experience, I go to my doctor, he wants me to have all these tests done. Thank God I'm healthy, but he'll give me 6 or 7 appointments. I do 2 of them. Okay, I sit down and do 7 appointments. Okay, so, and I pay attention and have some energy and good health, and that can get overwhelming. But if we make the message, you heard me say earlier about value. We are not perceived as bringing value into a situation. We are traditionally believed to be taking from the system. We have not had opportunities to show where we can contribute. So that's what some of what I am trying to address is all about. So here, the health is an immediate opportunity for us to get healthy, get wealthy, start businesses, and do some other creative things around rebuilding our communities. The young men that you talked about in the beginning with the guns, you know what percentage of those are mental health issues that they're experiencing, but there's nowhere for them to go. Okay, a lot of them are just in mental crisis. But if we had alternatives, okay, you can go over here, brothers on the street that can reel them in, those things begin to change. The other issue is housing. The city of Pittsburgh has a program called CARL, C-A-R-L, Construction and Rehab Loan. You get to purchase the property that needs rehab, and in the process, you get the money to rehab it. You get a couple, 2, 3 bids, lowest bid probably, and then you get to rehab the house and live in it. What happens is a lot of people around here and elsewhere have bought property from the city for $3,000 or $5,000, some really good price, what they perceive to be a good price. But then when it's time to fix up the property, you go head on into redlining. Banks are not willing to lend money in these communities where I would be the only house that's fixed up and everything else around me is raggedy. So they don't perceive it as value. But if you have a CARL program where you have the opportunity for many people to purchase homes throughout the community, this one would make a huge difference for the state of Pennsylvania, for the city of Pittsburgh, Harrisburg, Philadelphia, wherever you want to go, because now you have properties back on the tax roll. You have people living in these homes. When people own something, they protect it. They're going to gather around. They're going to start their little block club. They're going to start their watch club, to make sure that their community stays safe. But based on previous experiences, and that's the work I've done at Pittsburgh Community Reinvestment Group, it took federal law for banks to begin lending in low income and minority communities. But we do have the law working in our favor at this point in time. So starting a statewide program that would generate revenue and eliminate blighted communities sounds like a plan, something that people should seriously consider. And last is when I talk about business, now the governor signed an executive order that will increase contracts for minority businesses, access to contracts. However, minority businesses need three things: contracts, capital, and contacts. Of course, the contract is obvious. You need to have business. Access to capital is pretty obvious. Contacts is me being in an arena around the right people who make decisions about who gets contracts. But access to capital is all, even when I get a contract, if I can't go to the local bank or my bank and get a line of credit, what good is having a contract? So we got to change that model. I created a model that I call business equity bond. The business equity bond would allow the state to give a business a grant, which would be a collateral for a loan with a local bank. When the PPP money came out, Black businesses and women businesses were left out of it and did not get that money because it came through banks. And if you did not have a banking relationship beyond a checking account, you didn't have anybody to go to. You weren't on their radar screen. This is more than a loan product. It creates an opportunity to build a relationship. An example: the grant is put into the bank as collateral, and there would be a requirement where 4 times a year, the business owner and the banker meet so that the banker gets to know, first of all, the business owner and understand their business. The requirement of the bank is to help the small business get an SBA loan, okay, so that they have larger amounts of money and longer terms, okay, and now I have a relationship with a bank. So now I'm legitimate in the eyes of SBA, the state, or whoever is giving me a contract, right? At the end of 12 to 18 months, minority businesses carry a lot of debt on their balance sheets and are unable to get loans because of that fact. But at the end of 12 to 18 months, depending on how well the business manages the opportunity, the grant, I should say, the line of credit, they would get that money as a cash infusion to create equity on their balance sheet. So you've doubled the money. So I say it's a $50,000 loan. I got a $50,000 line of credit. I got $50,000 infusion of cash. That's $100,000. And the bank took me to help me with an SBA loan. Well, when you kind of put all that together, now we have stabilized. We begin to stabilize businesses in a way that we have not done before. So those are kind of some of the ideas that I think would be beneficial to minority businesses, specifically Black communities and Black businesses that can benefit under this administration. I'm going to take a breath now.
I guess my issue is, how does people learn about some of the things that you talk about? It doesn't have to be Pittsburgh. It could be anywhere. So what you're saying is they need to do some research. So they need to, what is the best mechanism that you think that these people should start?
These are ideas based on my research. These are opportunities. What people need to do is that we have some calls and start talking about the support. We need a political strategy, okay, in order to make these things happen. Okay, we need to meet with the director of Department of Health and Human Services. We need to meet with the Economic Development Department and the other agencies involved with this and begin to have conversations and propose these things to be put in place. So Zoom calls, because people can join from all over the state, because these are statewide efforts that we need to be pushing. We have a limited window. God forbid, hopefully Shapiro and Davis will be reelected, but let's not count on that. Let's look at the 2 or 3 years that we have remaining and what can we get accomplished in that timeline, since they are now demonstrating their openness and willingness to improve the quality of life for all Pennsylvanians, and that should include us. But again, I think we have to come to the table with defining what our needs are and not what people think we need.
I think that's a good point. I think what you just said is a good point, and I think that people should take what you just said. We need to direct where we want to go, opposed to somebody telling us where we want to go. But as you say, we got to start to develop and build a due diligence, and people across the state need to network so that we can get some things done. Because you and I both know traditionally what they've always done is splinter us off. And they splinter us off and give one person a crumb and give this other person a crumb. And unfortunately, nobody really gets anything.
Right. But the other piece of that, Richard, is the demonstrating the value of investment in us and what the return on investment is. A lot of people, most of these people are social service programs. A lot of the money goes to social service. Now, don't get me wrong, we need those, but how do we begin to curtail the need for social services when we have the opportunity to build wealth and income for people through business ownership and home ownership? Let's talk about us from that perspective, opposed to the perception, they just need more money for social services, the drug addiction, the this, the that. I mean, we got to present our value.
And I agree, but these are the kind of conversations that you and I are having, because on the most part, most people are basically sugar-coated. People don't realize, and I'm looking at some of your stuff, the statistics for Blacks are concerned. Black Pennsylvanians account for 12% of state population, but yet they make up 25% of medical assistance recipients, 29% of food assistance, and 53% of cash assistance. And then also, I'm looking at your statistics, and you're telling me Black children represent 35% of in foster care, while we only account for 13% of all children in the state. Those are some. Those are some frightening statistics.
That's right. That's right.
And so, what you're saying is we got to change the scenario of that. That's why you believe that health, economic development, and wealth, because I've always been a believer of this, economic development If we had jobs and we created jobs, then we can hire young people to have jobs. Because
Mhm.
one of my things is I've been a believer, and some people don't, economic development is one of the vehicles for our community. I admit when I was a young, I could go down and get a little job in the supermarket stocking or be in a newspaper or whatever. These kids don't have that. And so you're saying in order to correct some of these things and stop letting them use us as statistics, that we come to the table with wealth. We come to the table with strength. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Now, let me give you an example. When I worked in Philadelphia, I worked with Drexel, UPenn, and 14 other universities in the region. And I kind of was the vehicle for them to access minority businesses. So I would work with the companies. We get them all, ready for the game and determine what size contract that they could successfully operate, right?
Mm-hmm.
One of the things we were able to do is we talked the University of Penn into a contract with a minority business who was based in West Philadelphia. Now, West Philadelphia is like Homewood is now, kind of all
Mm-hmm.
over the place, shootings and blighted and the whole thing. However, we took the supplier, the prime, Office Depot, and they connected with this minority business. All of the business came through the minority business instead of the prime. That netted a $50 million contract for this minority business. And this is where economic development model comes in. He was located in the middle of a community who needed development. He hired people from the community to work for him. We brought in bankers and helped people understand budgeting and open up checking accounts. The next phase of that was bringing in bankers to talk about mortgages. People started buying houses around where the business was located. Okay, now understand the business model. When Office Depot, Staples, whoever it is, brings office supplies to the University of Pittsburgh, they just dump them at the loading dock. His business was sorting the packages and making sure that they got delivered to all of the various locations on campus. Okay? Now, $5 million contract for 10 years is how we got to 50 million. Now, if you can't build a base off of a $5 million contract each year, and that was only University of Pittsburgh. The goal was to build his capacity so that the other 14 universities could become part of that. Well, the other universities are located all over the place, and you can have that same effect and impact in neighborhoods and communities. It didn't require a lot of skill. You had to read and write, that kind of thing. So you were able to take community people who may not have had a high level of education, but they could do this, and it put them in the position for home ownership. Those are the kinds of models that we can recreate, okay? Now, I tried to work with Pasha, the state's education system wasn't quite as easy to do. But Drexel, Penn, St. Joe, all of those universities were all part of the same group, and they buy goods and services together to reduce their prices. That's how we were able to access and put some of these models together. So you can, if we can duplicate similar kind of models across the state in various communities, you can see the impact that something like that can have.
If somebody wanted to talk to you about your vision and the ways that you see how we can become very productive, and at the same time to change that narrative to we sit at the table as an equal partner, what would you say to that, and how could they get in contact?
Let me give you an email address: J.D.Hill ASSOC @outlook.com. That would be the best way. Send me a short email and we can have some conversations, and maybe you and I can get back together to talk about a call once we get enough interested people to flush out these individual activities. You know, somebody specializes in housing, somebody specializes in healthcare, or if they want to be on all three of the calls to get things started, get things moving. Because it's going to take, it's going to, now I have some meetings and some things that I will continue to do, but it will certainly go a lot faster with more people involved.
That's why I wanted you on my program, is because I think that we have to build a bridge of connections, because there's people in, whether Philadelphia, Harrisburg, wherever, we as a people have to pull together. I always hear this way, we're crabs in the barrel and blah, blah. And sometimes that's true. But at the same time, I think there's so many people out there that want to build a great legacy of that. Time is running, so I'm going to give you 5 minutes because I want to talk about some politics things for a few minutes.
Oh, okay.
Based on the roles that you've had in the past. So would you please say to my audience for the next 5 minutes what you think is so important that they need to think and understand?
Now, a couple of roles I think that's important. I was secretary of the Allegheny County Democratic Committee, and I am a committee woman here in the district that I live in. My parents were committee people, so politics is a large part of who I am. And one of the things that I think is important for us to understand as a people, voting is not enough. You got to go into your checkbook, your wallet, your debit card, whatever it is, and make sure that the candidates that you support have enough money to be able to run good races. And I think as a people, we think, you know, we vote, good job, but what people really need is money. I'm thinking of an example as we speak. Summer Lee, who is in Congress, needs to raise $1 million. There aren't many Black candidates coming out of the state of Pennsylvania that need to raise $1 million in order to keep their seat. This is a first for us, okay? Because we haven't been in that position to be able to, as a congresswoman, okay? So that normal, you know, everyday stuff, oh yeah, that's my girl, I like her, she's a good person. You got to go further than that. And we got to make sure that give people a reason to vote. Let's get personal. An example, I registered 4 young ladies, I guess they were in their early 20s, because they lost that allotment that they were getting from the from the federal government. If you recall, instead of giving people the child care credit, they started sending them $300, $400, $500, depending on how many children. Well, the Republicans would not vote to renew it. And they got accustomed to having that little extra money for their children. Well, it was cut off. And so I was able to explain to them why it was cut off. Well, they were like, give me that paper. Let me register to vote. And they did. I called them and said, now remember, a week from now is election day. You know, you want to get things back on track, you have to participate. So I think you got to connect the dots for people in terms of how does this affect me personally? What's in it for me? WIFM. Okay, is what I think. And I don't think we've done a good job in terms of helping people understand the importance of why they should vote.
Could you elaborate, since I'm going to tell, because people don't understand. People in political office reward those that they think is their friends. They reward those that they can count on to vote for them. And a lot of times we don't understand that. We should understand it. And the reason that we really should understand it, because it's very evident in our politics today, particular how a particular congressman may react. I mean, in Harrisburg, we have a very conservative one with Scott Perry. He continues to get elected, but he knows that he has a certain base that he can count on to help deliver him. He knows that. So therefore, his interest is to make sure that that particular base that he has is going to be very supportive. So would you agree that one of the things we got to do is that we got to get more involved? We got to do more than lip service, but we got to hold elected officials accountable, but we got to step up to the plate to help them there, whether it's manpower, money, voting, because based on my experience in politics, they always look at where they got their votes from. And when they see where they got their votes from, that's the group that they really
pay attention to. Well, it's a numbers game, I think, that our people don't understand. You know, I vote, nothing's changed. Well, but you need to get your sister and your cousin and your friend and your boy to vote also, because it's a numbers game. And if we have the numbers and we can sway, even now, quiet as it's kept, we can sway elections. Okay? We can literally sway elections if we all get on the same page and understand the assignment. Okay? So even though we may not have the numbers, if you are informed and understand that we need to vote a certain way, we can still influence a lot of elections, enough for them to pay attention to what our needs and concerns are until we get a better grip and get our numbers up. But that was one of the disappointments for me around, that's why I've resigned from being secretary, because the Black vote is not being valued. It's being taken for granted. And I think based on, you know me for 100 years now. I mean, I'm not crazy. Do my homework. I know where the party is going. If the Democratic Party is going to grow, it is going to be people of color. We're a multicultural society now. And if you don't acknowledge that and figure out what are the concerns of the people, of this group of people, and they be brought to the forefront, then you can't grow the party.
And no, you can go to party, but we also need to understand that we have to start holding our politicians accountable. If we talk about health disparities, if we talk about economic development, then we got to hold their feet to the fire. Now they got all this money out here that they're going to be fixing bridges, they're going to be fixing this, they're going to be fixing that. Well, we need to check the politicians as well as the state agencies and find out where the money is, what's the money for, and what we have to do to get it. So if we have businesses, coalitions, but we got to do it now, because The money's there. And if we keep waiting, I know what's going to happen. They're going to say, oh, y'all came too late. We already know that the money's there. Infrastructure has been an issue. It's there. We know that bridges. We know that water systems. We know that all this money is out here, but we have to do our research and step up to the plate and start to go after it now. And I'm telling my audience.
Now, I don't want to call names, but I think something important that we need to say and have people understand. When we elect a qualified Black candidate, there are a set of expectations that come with that. We do not need window dressers. We need people who understand our issues and concerns and have the governor's ear and are willing to take some risk on our behalf and not go along with the program or the party or whatever it is. And going back to your valid point, what does accountability look like? What does that mean? Do we understand that as a people? Because we kind of go vote, go home, something don't go right. Oh, see, that's why I don't vote. Or see, I knew they wasn't going to do anything. Well, we can't do that no more. That's a totally unacceptable. So one of our first meetings around these issues should be with Lieutenant Governor Austin Davis. Whole lot of us spent a whole lot of money and a whole lot of time making sure that he got the seat. Now it is time for a return on investment. We have a plan. These are the 3 or 4 things that we need funding for, that we know will transform our community as well as benefit the state of Pennsylvania. Those are the conversations that we need to be having. A busload of folks from Pittsburgh, busload of folks from Philly, wherever we coming from to have these conversations. We need to be knocking on doors.
No, I agree with you that we need to build coalitions for our investment. Unfortunately, time has just got so fast. It's moved it like quickly. So I'm going to let you finish with 2 minutes of saying what you feel that you want to leave my audience with.
I would like to let people know that we don't have to do things the way we've been doing them. We've been fortunate enough, a lot of us have been exposed and educated. We know how to do things. And that those of us who are willing need to come together, take the benefits that we have enjoyed, and make sure that we play it backwards to bring some people forward. So I hope some of you listening will reach out so that we can begin setting up these meetings and having conversations and taking advantage of the many opportunities that currently exist for us at the state of Pennsylvania. And I'd like to thank you.
Well, thank
for
you.
This opportunity.
Give me your information one more time.
J.D.Hill is my name. And my email address is J.D.Hill, JDHillAssoc, associates abbreviation, at outlook.com.
Well, I want to thank you, and I'm going to have you back on again. But, you know, the reason I have these programs, and that's why I call it Did You Know, is so that you will know. But at the same time, it's our responsibility to do our own research. It's our own responsibility to hold people accountable. Mm-hmm. So, you know, we cannot continue, as you say, to go about woe me, woe that. But one of the things that you did say today, and I'm going to leave this audience with, I hope you tell your young people, how we have such wonderful, vibrant communities when we were growing up. We had a movie theater in Homewood. You had one in Harrisburg. You had them. We had entrepreneurship that we owned. But at the same time, we have to support one another politically and economically and financially. We have to support one another, but at the same time, we owe each other accountability to do the right thing. Because I get tired of hearing three things: crab in the barrel and inferior service, when we should give the same service that we would want from anybody. So, Jack, I want to thank you again for coming on. I've known you a long time, and I'm glad to have the opportunity to have you on, and I'm so proud of you. I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
Because I know where you came from, and you know where I came from. But really what that should tell anybody, because I'm a believer of that. If Jackie did it, and I did it, so can you. Good night.
Amen. Good night.
Night.
Thank you for joining the Richard Utley Show on The Voice 17104. We will be here on The Voice 17104 every first and third Tuesday from 6:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. Once again, thanks for viewing. Remember to visit us on Facebook at Richard Utley, and we welcome your questions and or comments.
That was kind of heavy, wasn't it?